How's it going, everybody? Ben from the Ben and Bev channel here, checking in just to say thanks so much for tuning in, watching the Films You Should Try series last week for the first episode covering Synchronic. This week's episode will be covering Goodnight Mommy, which I'm just going to go ahead and warn you can be pretty extreme at times. The movie probably isn't for everyone, as it is a pretty extreme horror film, but I think it has some really important moments in it that make it an essential watch for someone that can stomach it. So real quick before we get started, everybody, just a quick warning that this movie can be pretty extreme, and there's a couple other movies coming up on this list that I'm just going to put the extreme label on as well. Disturbing, messed up, whatever you want to call them. These movies might not be for you if you got a weak stomach. You've been warned. Goodnight Mommy is a 2015 German-language horror film directed by Veronika, Franz, and Severin, Fiala. The movie follows Lucas and Elias, two twins who are awaiting their mother to return home from a facial reconstruction surgery after an accident that happens somewhere before the movie. The two boys are unsure if their mother is really the same person at all after she returns with her facial coverings on and her very dramatically different attitude, specifically towards one of the brothers over the other, and I do lose track of which twin is which throughout the movie.
The names of the twins are Elias and Lucas Schwarz, and that's actually the names of the twins in real life. Maybe they just didn't feel like inventing names for the characters after the 240 sets of twins that were auditioned for the main role.
I believe it's Lucas that's treated this way, and it's really interesting how the movie handles it because you get a really negative view of the mom in the scenes that they have together. There are three different types of scenes that are in the movie. There's the scenes of the mom interacting with the children and total miscommunication and chaos in almost every instance, or even in the more gentle scenes you can just see the growing disconnect between them even though they're having an okay conversation. Then there's brief scenes of build-up just showing the mom alone in her room, interacting with herself and kind of handling the different situations she's had with her kids and her reactions to them, and those you kind of build a little bit of empathy towards her, and you understand that she's just going through this recent accident and change, and you kind of find out later on in the movie that her job has a lot to do with her facial appearance and expression, as well as the fact that either sometime before the accident or after the accident, she had a divorce with the boy's father.
Also, a small detail you may not notice the first time watching through is that throughout the movie, the difference between the twins is that one's left-handed, the other one's right-handed. They show it a lot of times with them eating, passing drinks to each other, opening doors, or brushing teeth, but I didn't really catch on to it until near the end of the film.
You get a little bit of sense of dread even between the two brothers because the other one's a little more withdrawn and quiet. This is especially apparent with the opening scene of the film just being the two boys playing various hide-and-go-seek across this beautiful rural countryside property and a nice art house. There's a sense of I know it's just the sound design and the way they filmed the movie, obviously. They did a very effective job of doing it, but they're just playing hide-and-seek, and the boys disappear for irregularly long periods of time. Leading to almost jump scare levels of intensity and peaking just to introduce you to the movie and its tone.
I wanted to fanboy for a small moment over that camera angle in the opening sequence of the two twins playing, the one where the one boy runs into the cave and the camera just looms behind his head as he kind of looks and waits for the other brother to run out. Looking back on that scene after the end of the movie, it completely changes it for me, and I think it was a really good foreshadowing of the ending of the film. One you could just pull off as a really cool existential scene without it seeming like a spoiler at all.
Now, tone.
That's an iffy subject.
Unlike the directing duo's more recent film, The Lodge, where at some points the audience was very confused by the elements they were being shown, there are elements of that here where it confuses you, but it always feels like you are watching this train wreck happen. You feel like you're just watching this family fall apart. You see the scenes with the boys and they're off on their own journey trying to figure out what this imposter figure is, and it gets solidified when they find that picture of their mother with someone else. And we get revealed later that it's not really that big of a deal, but the boys, they can't unsee that, especially since she doesn't look the same even when she takes it off. Which is really sad for the mom when you think about it, because when she takes the bandages off, she's expecting the boys to be happy to see her and recognize her, but she truly doesn't look the same after whatever the horrible accident was that she had. And in the time frame for the first watch of the movie, if you're only going to see it the one time, before you get to that ending, which changes the way you look at the whole movie, by the way, she can come off as cold, mean, and at some points even abusive, specifically with the not feeding of the one child. When this movie starts peaking, it gets to a very unpleasant place. And I don't just mean unpleasant and gory, which it is a little bit. It's not the most violent thing I've seen. It's not the most messed up thing I've seen. But the stark realism and just the way that they handle this movie makes it so much harder to watch those scenes. Basically, any point after where they tie up their mom to interrogate her, yeah, it's hard to watch. Their methods of interrogation may seem like torture for the being torture on the outside, but if you look at it from a childish perspective, the things like, slight spoiler here, but the over-flossing and the super glue and even the magnifying glass used to burn her skin that she wasn't supposed to get out in the sunlight feel like something a kid would do, which made the movie even harder for me to watch. Like, it made me just sit there and go, oh no, no.
Why me?
I mean, mind you, I watched this at 2 a.m, but it was, I haven't cringed that hard in a movie in a long time, and I was, at this point, almost ready to turn the movie off. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to go where this movie's going to go.
Oh, and did I forget to mention that for some reason the twins find a sick cat in what appears to be some type of strange child grave? They bring it home, it dies. I couldn't tell if the mom killed it, but of course that's what the kids think, and they put it in a vat of formaldehyde and leave it in the center of the room. Like, what? It is. I was not expecting it, and the imagery of that cat floating in the tank is forever floating in my mind, especially the image of it burning with the cockroaches inside of it at the end of the movie.
And it really is just a total train wreck. And that's where I think The Lodge, at least to me, I think it's a little bit superior of a movie because it does have that horrific element. It doesn't quite ever go to the extreme, bleak torture interrogation setting like this one does, but it's more devastating emotionally and in that dark area. While both these movies are dark, this movie just feels more cold, realistic, and bare. And I just want to take this time to say that I am well aware that not every movie is meant to be a good time. I like a lot of movies that are really dark and bleak. But for some reason, and I literally think it's just because they did such a good job with the movie, it is so possible to me that it's hard to watch. It's brutal. There's not, honestly, a moment of humor in here, and there's so much mystery and confusion because you get bits of information just fed to you through lines. It's just looks, stares, and the long thoughts and interactions between our characters as their lives just descend into this madness that eventually peaks to the point of an extreme filmmaker's level of torture, but without the level of gore. And I've seen plenty of movies that have been way more violent than this. I know I've said that already in this review, but I mean, I very much enjoyed movies such as Martyrs. I like a fair amount of really graphic horror movies, but they didn't bother me nearly as much as this movie did. It rattles you beyond a movie way. It feels like you're watching a psychological study of a family for a class or something. Like, you have to complete this. This is the last thing before you can get to whatever state of betterment you're looking for. And at this point you're saying, Ben, this movie, as you said, isn't the funnest movie to watch. It can be super brutal and really graphic, and it might really bother some people, and it even bothered you. Why would you want to watch it?
Great question, bro.
And honestly, the ending is such a good shock and a great twist to the end of the movie. It actually elevates the movie for me, and I think it is actually probably close to a required watching if you're into horror movies, despite how extreme it can get, and despite how unconventional it could be for a standard horror movie, at times feeling more like a suspense film, with a deep taste for art house and scenery.
Warning. The following spoilers may ruin the first viewing of the movie for you, so if you truly want to see this movie, don't watch this part. You've been warned.
Bro.
One of them kids is dead.
One of those kids hasn't been there the whole movie. That's the twist.
The one brother, the kind of evil one, he died in that accident before the facial reconstruction surgery. That's why she won't feed him.
The mom isn't being abusive. She's dealing with her kid losing his mind, and her losing her mind, also losing the loss of her husband, and losing the loss of a child, losing the loss of the way she looks. This movie, that scene is when he is burning the house down, when you realize this. And I knew it right when they switched to him because I didn't see the other brother. And I was kind of letting on when they showed the other two characters in the movie besides the family. There's these two people from the blood bank that show up for some reason. I noticed when they were there trying to talk to the boys, They only interact with one of them, and the other kid was just sitting in the background in silence. And I was just kind of like, did that kid just not want to act today, or what was going on? But it was intentional. We're then shown a scene of the firemen putting out the fire of the house, and you see what appears to be the mom running out of it and off into the woods. I was super confused by that because she was definitely burning alive. I don't know. It was a little strange if you ask me.
It is stranger.
Then we see what appears to be two boys running through the cornfield at night away from the house. You see the two little tufts of the boys running through the corn, which would indicate they're both really there. When they get to the end, there's their mom, looking like she does in the pictures. Then that weird church hymn starts playing that's in the movie, and it ends on a happy note. Them all reunited with the family.
If you have a physical copy of this film, there's actually an interview with the two directors that I highly suggest watching afterwards, as it kind of adds a lot more to the context of the film, and they explain that the idea was actually influenced by Veronika Franz's childhood. When her mom used to play Monster with her, there would be times where she'd occasionally forget that they were playing a game, and this movie played on the extreme idea of that. It also gives a lot more insight to details of the movie's production, including the boys' audition, as well as the film being filmed with no script beforehand and in chronological order. With lead actress Suzanne West living alone for 3 months to prepare for the role, often completely covered in bandages, and having 2 pet cockroaches, credited as stunt roaches, Matilda and Normal.
So Goodnight Mommy was a far cry away from what I thought it was going to be, and it went into a territory and made me feel a way that I wasn't expecting to make me feel. I honestly think if I would have seen the movie at a different time of life where things in my own life and in the world around us weren't so grim, it might have impacted me a little less, and it might be one I'd go back to a little more, especially with the twist at the end. It makes me want to go back and watch it again, but the journey to get there is just so brutal of a climb. But I will say, if you're brave, if you're adventurous, or if you love horror movies, or if you're into extreme movies in general, definitely give it a try, because the director handles it in such a way that it is so brutal to watch that you want to look away the whole time. Despite everything, I'm going to give Goodnight Mommy an 8.3. The cinematography was beautiful, the acting was outstanding. Despite there only being 3 people, they really carried this movie, and the sound design helped the movie be really, really intimidating. Even when barely anything was happening, you always felt that sense of existential dread. Have you seen Goodnight Mommy? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't seen The Lodge, which is the other movie by the directing duo, I would definitely check that out. I think it's on Hulu at the moment as well. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching again. We'll be excited to bring you another episode of Films You Should Try next week, covering a little movie by a guy named
James Gunn.
Don't know what it is yet, but we'll see you then. Ben and Bev, out.